And we're back again here on The Pulse. This is Joy News, independent, fearless, and credible wherever you are watching us from. This is The Pulse. And of course, this afternoon, we've got an exciting package for you. We're live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV is 125. We are on X Spaces, on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, on myjoyonline.com. As always, my name is Elton Brobe, and it's always a pleasure to have you here. This afternoon, uncertainty over the ECG's 1,300 Mason containers escalates as former Managing Director Samuel Dubik Mahama denies reports of their loss, asserting instead they've been auctioned.
My candid opinion is containers cannot get missing. They can be misplaced. If they get lost at sea, you are immediately informed.
And we'll hear more from him, plus speak to the Deputy Energy Minister on the way forward. Also, coming up, mining firm threatens to sue Western North Regional Minister over claims it is involved in illegal mining. We have details as the firm Clean Jobs Resources say it is rather working with state security agencies and the Forestry Commission to fight illegal miners who invaded their illegally acquired concession. Lands and Natural Resources Minister Emmanuel Amakopibua is calling on the judiciary to play a critical role in tackling illegal mining.
Have to win together, and this fight is not going to be easy. 76 arrests, where some people send the government trying to prosecute people, and the judge says they should give the excavators.
So Ghana faces fresh economic challenge as the United States slaps a 10% tariff on exports, whilst concerns grow over the impact of Ghana-U.S. relations. U.S. Ambassador Virginia Palmer insists Ghana remains a key partner.
No matter what the change in language and how we express it or the change in focus, Ghana is a really important partner of the United States and will continue to be so.
And we'll hear the perspective of a former Deputy Trade Minister and currently Member of Parliament for New Javin South, who is professing some remedial measures Ghana can take to deal with the tariff imposition by the United States of America. These plus many more here on the Thursday edition of The Pulse as we look forward to that national dialogue on the Ghana National Fire Service in the next 3 hours. Stay tuned in as we have the details in a jiffy. We are on X Spaces, we are on YouTube, we are on Facebook, we are on myjoyonline.com, and of course on DSTV, GoTV, and wherever you are watching from. I say welcome. Let's settle for the details now. Now, the former Managing Director of the Electricity Company of Ghana, Samuel Dubik Mahama, says the so-called Mason containers at the ports have actually not gone missing. They may have been auctioned by the Ghana Revenue Authority. Speaking on the Super Morning Show today, Samuel Dubik Mahama claimed the Ghana Revenue Authority auctioned a number of containers belonging to ECG, which had not been cleared because of lack of funds as well as those in dispute. He explained that he made an attempt to stop the auction but did not get a response from the Ghana Revenue Authority. He is however calling for an audit and full-scale investigation to unravel the full circumstances around the scandal.
The last time the minister spoke at the beginning of this whole container gate or container saga, he said the containers are in the port. The conversation would have been different if the containers had left the port and they were in the custody of ECG. And ECG, and then the containers got lost from the yard of ECG. Not so. But in this regard, the containers are within the port of the Republic of Ghana and it's within the control of GPHA and Ghana Customs. My candid opinion is containers cannot get missing. They can be misplaced. If they get lost at sea, you are immediately informed. Since there is no record to the fact that containers got lost at sea, because of the international supply chain logistics, there's a platform. When you key in a container, the way bill, who was in control of the container, all of that is there. I just think, we should dial it down a notch. Let's all assist the minister. because we all need to get to the bottom of this, to get to the bottom of where each container sits. And I think it's just a matter of all of us, including ECG, including the two state agencies who are in control of the port, have a proper sit down, go through the paperwork, run it through the system, and definitely we'll come to the right conclusions.
So are you saying the containers are there at the ports?
What I'm saying is the containers cannot get missing. At worst, they have been misplaced, or the only other option of a container leaving the port is through an auction. So there's also a database that will show which containers have been auctioned. So the whole conversation is ECG, yeah, it's okay, fine. In every home, there are issues. But the conversation now is this: let's situate it. The containers were in the port. To the best of my knowledge, at the time I was leaving, it was well within, the only people that would give me that full facts was the Director for Materials and Transport. And I believe strongly at that point, his main concern was that we were not having enough cash flow to take the containers out of the port.
Okay.
2, there was an investigation under the LNR project. So those bunch of containers, which was quite a number, were also stuck at the port because Yoko was investigating.
How many?
I can't say off the top of my head, but they're quite. Now, PDS also came in. At that point, at some point, we realized that some of the containers were being auctioned. So
auctioned by whom?
By the GRA, by the Customs Division.
While you were there, they started to auction some
Yes.
of these containers.
Yes, it came to my notice, and I responded. I don't know, for some weird reason, some of those letters have found their way into the public domain. I wrote a few letters saying, hey, could you halt on the sale of these containers? Blah. I quite remember, I don't think I got any response on that. So that's another way that containers can leave the
So
port.
these containers that are now popping up, according to reports, in the custody of Chinese and Indians all over the country, could be auctioned containers.
Yes. Yes. That's why the only way to ascertain this is a proper audit and a proper investigation to know how they made their way out of the port.
So a committee says they've done an investigation, and they are the ones giving us what we know now. Did they contact you?
I have said this, and I'll continue to say it. I wasn't contacted, and it's one of the things that saddened me the most, because contrary to a few beliefs that after I resigned, I decided to run away, I was going to be arrested. I was right here, and I've been right here till now. And so I keep repeating this to everybody. Look, I don't have anywhere to go. I'm homegrown. I did all my schooling in Ghana. I grew up in Fadama. I'm 2 lanes away from the chief imam's place. That's where I used to play football. My mom taught at the Fadama school. I'm a household name in Fadama when I walk through the streets. So I came to serve. And in serving, if I've left and I've been asked to come and account for my stewardship, why should I run away? Look, I pride myself in the success that was achieved at ECG in 2 years and 4 months. They saw an astronomical growth in revenue from about 450, 500 million to about 1.5 billion. That's 3 times. You can't tell me that tariff was increased by 150% in that 2 years, 4 month period. It's not possible. For me, I believe teamwork. I believe conversations are in this place to be had. I believe we need to support the minister. The minister, governments are supposed to succeed each other, and there's always supposed to be success. What the minister has unraveled is something that needs to be looked at. We all need to support him. There shouldn't be any name calling, because the stuff in those containers, as you said, as he says, are critical materials.
You've sought to explain the reason for there being so many containers, right? But according to them, from 2022 to 2024, ECG's planned procurement was about 4.1 billion. However, your actual procurement, all in cities, your actual procurement was 16.9 billion, which means you over-procured by 12.8 billion. How do you explain that?
I explain it by, I was saying something earlier on. I honestly don't want to answer to this committee report because I don't want the committee to get my responses through the media. What they did to me wasn't fair. I don't want to do the same to them. I have even a problem with the word over procurement.
All right, so that's the former managing director of the electricity company of Ghana, Samuel Dubik Mahama. And of course, we'll try and understand what really is going on here. Let's get some understanding of the situation. He says that he was not contacted. He's been in Ghana. He would offer his whatever information that he has on this matter. Let's bring in a former Director General of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, Richard Anamu, who is joining us on Zoom. Mr. Anamu, good afternoon and welcome to the Pulse.
Yes, good afternoon and best wishes to your numerous listeners.
Great. Let me also welcome the Deputy Minister for Energy, also joining us. Good afternoon, Honorable, and welcome to the Pulse.
Good afternoon. Great.
So first, let me start with you, Deputy Minister for Energy. You heard the former MD, Mr. Samuel Dubik Mahama. He makes the point that the containers are not missing. What has been uncovered are the ones that were auctioned. I don't know whether a proper response can be put in proper context as far as these matters are concerned.
Okay, thank you, Elton. And then I'll use this opportunity to say good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. I just listened briefly to the former MD, Mr. Dubik. I think from what I take from his submission is that he's ever ready to work along to make sure that we unravel all the issues that surround the container. As to what he has just said, we, from our side, from the ministry's point, the minister was very clear that there was some mismatch or misinformation given to him at the transition and when he went on site. That is actually stated his constitution of the committee. And the committee also came up with another report. The minister, in any way, he's actually been very consistent with his point that the missing containers, or where if Mr. Dubik is saying that it's not missing but misplaced, whatever it says, you have to find where those containers are. So we, as a ministry, we have already engaged the National Security and then the Attorney General's office to actually work on this. So the National Security and the security agencies are doing the necessary investigation.
Is it possible, because of the role he played as managing director of ECG during the period that he served, his assistance may be required as far as the investigations are concerned?
Obviously, I cannot really determine that for the security, but I'm very sure that even with the wealth of knowledge and information he has with regards to this, I think it would be very prudent to invite him and then seek his few answers or also what he knows about it, to just help the situation. That is all. Because
of the privileged role or the place that he sat, I mean...
No, I'm just saying that he has actually, even from the conversation that you have had with him, as I earlier said, I just listened briefly because I was just coming from a meeting and then I heard him speak briefly. So I'm saying that at least even without he speaking now, having headed ECG for this period, I think that it's prudent that you invite such person to also take a few answers from you with respect to the current containers that we are talking about.
And his disappointment is that the committee that was set up by the minister did not even speak to him.
Okay, so obviously I think that I cannot speak to it because I don't know. We have also not listened to the side of the committee. And in the committee's report, they didn't indicate the number of the people that they contacted. They didn't actually make that.
So, Honorable, is the ministry aware of the number of containers that were auctioned?
No.
And so any talk of auction may have to be subjected to some kind of investigation?
So, Elton, as I earlier indicated, there is currently an ongoing investigation. Myself, even this afternoon, have done a letter also following up on one or two of them. So the whole discussion, I believe that we maybe have to start that bit and then wait by next week, a lot of reports will come out, and then that would actually guide us in our conversation. Because, the missing containers or whatever it is, the items that Mr. Dubik is saying that they may possibly be ocean. I think if he says that they are possibly ocean containers and then those materials are from ocean containers, I think that one, he may have to be a bit more or less, I would just say that he cannot preempt to say that all the items that have been found could be ocean, because he may not be privy to where people got their materials from. So I think that personally, that is not the position of the ministry. Personally, I think that may not be right.
So this
on Sunday, I had an intel of a truck loaded with cables, which developed the fault on the straight road. I called the police, asked them to impound the truck. From Sunday up to today, as we speak, nobody has actually gone to the police station to claim ownership of the cables. Now the driver and the mate, they are in police custody. Car owner has not even shown up. Owners of whoever gave them the material, they actually mentioned some names. Nobody has got. When they went to check, there were ECG embals on the cables.
Right.
So these are some of the things that we are still doing a lot more investigation. I think the one who is in charge of it, I would prefer that maybe we just hold on for them to give us some information, which I hope is not going to be long from now.
Right, just a final question for us. So this new investigation, is this the one you've written to the Attorney General and the NIB to undertake?
Well, that one was done by the minister. I'm just saying that there are other follow-ups that when it can become necessary, we all do. So sometimes, just like I mentioned the Shrewdrow one, the information got to me. So I have to relay the information to the security and then the national security to actually also move into also ascertain the fact.
Okay. And then last week, or over the weekend, the minister said he is contemplating setting up another committee that will be made up of custom, forensic experts to look at how the containers got into the country, the processes it went through, and then finally how it left the port. Has that also started?
Yeah, so all this are also they are all, so there are a lot of work actually being done now. The whole issue goes beyond just containers. Even the bit about procurement, so we'll do a very holistic investigation on all these issues. Even as we pursue, we look at the direction of specifically for the containers. We also do a whole audit and then the investigation on the ECG and procurement and how it declare products from the ports.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Richard John Mensah, Deputy Energy Minister. Now, let me go back to understand how things work at the port. Let me bring in Mr. Anamu. Mr. Anamu has worked with the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority and is very much abreast with how things work there. Mr. Anamu, so, educate us. You are a holding entity, if you like. But usually when containers come in, what processes must they go through before it is no longer in the hands of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority?
Okay, thank you very much. Whenever a container loaded with cargo arrives in the port, three parties have interest. First and foremost is the shipping line, because the shipping line is the line that brought the container to the port. The consignee also only has an interest in the goods in the container. The container itself belongs to the shipping line. So the shipping line is the first and foremost person that has an interest in the container. And it's the shipping line that holds the bill of lading together with the shipper himself. And they are the people who will have to inform or give clearance to the consignee to proceed to customs to pay the necessary duties and GPHA to clear their goods. The other person, the other institution that has an interest is the customs. The customs, because not for the container, but what is inside the container. They are interested in what is inside the container because of customs duties, or whether or not even those goods are part of cargo that should even come into the country at all, and what type of cargo it is. Then the third person, when you are using person in general, is GPHA. Once the container leaves the vessel and crosses what we call the quay, crosses onto the land, from the vessel to the land, GPHA would have performed a duty, what we call stevedore.
Right.
Then from there, it moves it to the stacking area. And from then on, there will be a handling, lifting the container left and right all over the place until the container finally leaves the port. So GPHA is the other institution that has an interest in the container. First and foremost, they have to recover their handling charges, they have to recover their rent charges, and also to ensure that the container eventually gets to the owner or the person, the consignee, who imported the cargo into the port. So these are the three players that are involved in getting the goods out of the container. Now, inside the ports,
right,
the container may leave as a whole. That is, if customs clears the consignee that they can leave after they have paid the duty or they are going into another terminal outside the port. Or that the goods in the container may be divan, in which case the container is still in the port. What is inside the container has been cleared out and the contents put onto a track. That's what we call the divaning. And then the container remains in the port. From then on, the empty container goes back to the shipping line. And then the goods go through the processes to leave the port. Now, the containers remain in the port. If they are not divaned, they remain in the port, and there's a time and all that. I mean, this by law. After so many months or weeks or whatever, which we all knew, that, I mean, the ECG, and I think to some extent Ghana Water Company and other, I think, state companies has large numbers of containers sitting in the port prior to 2025. All of these are attracting rent and handling and occupying space inside the port. With in respect of this particular cargo that we're talking about, the burden is on customs to tell us what happened to the containers. First and foremost, it is because remember that the cargo belongs to government. ECG is 100% government.
Right.
And therefore, all the details of the containers are known to ECG. Therefore, first and foremost, what is coming from ECG has to the containers based on the bill of lading. What is the total number of containers as far as they are concerned? And how many have they gotten and how many have they not gotten? I've heard the former DG of ECG saying that he had written to the customs not to auction the containers.
Yes.
That sounded very strange to me.
Why?
Because, I mean, customs is government. ECG is government. Customs go to collect the revenue from government. ECG is government. I do also know at the fact that several state institutions, including central government, also owes ECG. So it would be very, very ridiculous that customs are just will be looking at one side of the ball, that they have not paid duties, so they can proceed to auction the goods without recourse to the fact that the money that they're going to collect to government, their customer, that same customer is owing ECG.
Right.
In terms of what? power supply to the army, to the police, to hospitals, to schools, and all that. So it's kind of left and right washing each other. So on the whole, what I'm saying is that the containers can be found wherever they have gone to. GPHA will have records of them. If they were transferred to another terminal somewhere, GPHA will have records. The shipping line will have records as to the movement of their containers. Either the goods were divined inside the ports, for that matter, the empty containers were taken away, or the goods were divined outside the ports, where there is another terminal outside where, overstayed containers are kept, and then later on auctioned. If they are auctioned, GPHA, so long as it remains within the confines of GPHA, GPHA will have data on all these containers.
Right. So, Mr.
Yes.
Namo, what we have been told per the report of the committee that was set up by the energy minister, their conclusion is that 1,300 containers cannot be accounted for. In fact, in their words, these containers are missing. They cannot be traced. And we are saying that per how things are done at the port, it is possible to identify every container that left the port and where it is now.
That is correct. At any point in time, GPHA can tell you where the container is, whether it was divined and the container taken away by the shipping line, or whatever happened to that container. GPHA will be in the know. The shipping lines, who are the owners of the physical container, can also tell you because if you are taking a container outside the ports, the shipping lines will have to tell you. If they trust you, they allow you to take the container away without paying anything. If they don't trust you, they will let you make a deposit before the container leaves. Remember, ECG only has interest in the goods inside the container. They are not owners of the container.
Right.
Yes. And therefore, the physical movement of the container will be known by the shipping line, whether in or out of the ports. But once it is within the port, GPHA will know the physical movement of every single container.
So therefore, it may not be appropriate to use the word missing in this context.
When they say missing, you can say that it is a missing if it is outside the ports. And you cannot tell where the container has gone to, because once it has exited from the ports, with all the customs clearance, the hands of GPHA are clean. They end up there. They don't follow up. It's not their business. And if the customs, for example, let's say that the goods were transferred to a bonded warehouse somewhere, and the customs follow up, GPHA is no longer involved in that. No. But if it is within GPHA, I can cross my heart unless things have changed. As at the time we're leaving office, every single container can be accounted for.
All right.
Yes.
Okay. So therefore, the MD of the former MD may be right when he said that the containers cannot be described as missing.
Well, he may be right. Where missing means that, first and foremost, we have not been told which containers are missing, cannot be found. That is the critical point. Which containers, first to confirm that those containers did arrive at the port, that those containers at the last known, their last known position was at GPHA,
right,
where GPHA includes MPS. Or their last known position is that it was at GPHA, but it had exited GPHA on these dates. And therefore, we don't know where those containers are. Yes. That is only by which you say that you cannot tell where they are. Otherwise, there's no basis to say that you cannot find the containers.
At the last count, the minister mentioned, for example, that they have recovered 200 of the so-called missing containers, meaning if they are able to expand their scope and be more diligent, it is possible that they will be able to recover all the containers in question.
It's possible. The only thing they didn't tell us was those 200 containers, where were they recovered from? Was it inside the port or outside the port?
Some, according to him, were found at Asharman. The content were lost. The content were not in the container. They found an empty container abandoned. But some, in some, smelter shops somewhere around the Tema industrial area.
You mean the containers or the goods?
Right.
There's difference between the container and the goods.
Some they found the container with the goods. Some they found an empty container.
Yeah, so once you find the container, it means it exited the port. The next question is to take that number and go back to GPHA to find out how did this container leave the port and when. And GPHA will be able to tell you.
The decision to auction would have come from the Ghana Revenue Authority.
The decision to auction is the sole prerogative of customs.
And Ghana Ports or Harbours Authority doesn't play any role during this process?
No. They don't have, they cannot exercise any discretion. Their only role is to probably come in, lift the container down for customs to go and do all their auctioning and what have you, and they'll be waiting to collect their rent and handling charges. Full stop.
And so when that decision
is how much they auction it, who buys it, and where it is going after that is none of DPH's business.
So when that decision is taken, it means that ECG, the importer, have lost every right to lay claim to the container.
If customs say that they are going to auction, which is that should be a very, very painful decision. In fact, that is something that customs person will have to come and explain to. To me, I do not see how you, especially, what we know of state properties are goods that have stayed in the port for several years. And they normally move them to what we call the customs state warehouse, where they have done everything possible. The people are not coming for them, especially most of it is normally goods that have come in and medical goods, and then they were looking for exemption. They didn't get the exemption, or individuals have imported their goods and they'll not be able to pay duty, and then the goods, so all of those have been moved to the state warehouse. But so in that case, at some point, the customs will want to auction them. And that is normally after several years.
Right.
Probably 4 or 5 years or more. But when you are dealing with a state institution like ECG, who itself also supplies power to customs themselves, if I'm the boss of ECG, of customs, I'll be very, very, very hesitant in attempting to auction any goods that belong to ECG. That to me will be suicidal.
The Energy Ministry is bent on getting to the bottom of this matter. Given your enormous experience at the port, what would be your advice, especially as we all try to find answers to what is happening regarding these containers? What would be your advice to government, to ECG especially?
My advice to government is as simple as that. First, get ECG to identify all the containers that were imported into the country. 2, all the containers that in their view, they know where the containers have gone to. 3, what in their view has happened to the remaining containers that they cannot account for, in their opinion. Then at the same time, write to GPHA. Please, as per from ECG, this is the number of containers, container number this, arrived this, by this vessel, blah, blah, all of that. Ask GPHA for a full report on each of these containers and where they are. If they left GPHA, GPHA will be able to tell you when they left and who was the person who took them out. In fact, they will be able to tell you, because the containers are not moved by themselves, they're moved by vehicles. So GPHA will be able to tell you which vehicle took the particular container and when. Full stop. Then the last one is to go back to the shipping line. That the shipping line, please, kindly, we have got all this information about your container that you brought to the country. Kindly advise us as to the status of these containers as far as you are concerned. The shipping line will quickly and tell you exactly what happened to their containers and where they think they are. With all these 3, you should be ready to go. It's a simple, desktop, I will call it Excel analysis. Yes.
And then just briefly for me, if in the event that we are unable to account for the containers, would that result in some cost to the importer, in this case, ECG, and by extension, government?
When you say you cannot account for the goods in the container, let's be using the correct thing, because if the goods were emptied inside the port, can you see the video?
Yes.
Look at the video.
Yes.
Have you seen what's on the screen?
Yes.
You see that they are devaluing the container. They are stripping the container. Okay, so if the goods inside the container were stripped and put into a truck, that container will go back to the shipping line.
No, I asked the question because of information we have, and this has been collaborated by the Energy Minister, that some empty containers were found somewhere around Ashaman and Tema. I'm saying that because these containers must go back to where it came from, and if that doesn't happen, would that result in some kind of cost to the importer and by extension government?
Yes. Because when you take a container from the shipping line, but the container does not belong to you, the consignee, in this case, ECG.
Yes.
It belongs to the shipping line, and you have a duty to send it back to the shipping line. And what the shipping lines normally do at certain times is that they ask you to pay a deposit before you leave. So what it means is that if you don't, and you take they trust you, and you take the container out, and it doesn't come back, you also owe that shipping line that container demurrage for all the period that the container was with you. Yes.
Mr. Rejoinder, thank you so much for this education for you this afternoon. I appreciate your time so much. Let me bring in Mr. Yaucha. He's from the Africa Center for Energy Policy. I'll let you have the final bite. Let me allow Honorable Jan Mensah his final talks on this matter. Honorable Minister, you've heard the former MD of the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. He's provided some kind of recommendation to government. I don't know to what extent government is looking into this and how some of these advice can be incorporated into the overall quest to bring finality to this matter.
Okay, thank you once again. I listened to him carefully, and I've actually taken note of some of the recommendations that he made. Obviously, I would even just take his number. I would actually try and get in contact with him and then see the way forward. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for Honorable Deputy Minister. Let me now go to the Africa Center for Energy Policy, Yaucha. They've been observing and monitoring this developing story. Mr. Yaucha, from where you sit at ASEP, what is your reading to what is happening? From ECG to government to those who've taken custody of the containers and then turning it into something else, and the question Ghanaians are asking.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. I will not pretend to be an expert in logistics and supply chain like director who just spoke, explaining the processes. But what we see and what is concerning for us is that the cost of all of this is going to be borne by the consumer through electricity tariffs. Because if ECG is procuring equipment for its work, transformers and all of that, it accounts for that as its operating cost that is factored into our tariffs. So if the procurement processes for ECG's operations ends up like this, where one, we lose the materials that are purchased that would be used to retool the infrastructure for us to get better service. We lose it. We also lose the better service that will come out of using these materials. And then on top of that, we have to pay for it because that is the cost that will be incurred in doing the business that they do. And for us, that is the worrying part of the whole conversation. And how do we ensure that some things like this don't happen again? Because oftentimes you hear pockets of this issue. I mean, this is not the first time ECG has engaged in questionable procurement practices.
Right.
Remember the LNR incidents where over $40 million worth of meters have been procured, and to date, those meters have not been used. They are not fit for purpose. That is money that has gone down the drain. How do we ensure that it doesn't happen again? And we can only do that when we hold people criminally liable for some of these things that happen. Because when people know that they can get away freely with such wanton dissipation of public funds, it will continue. Another set of managers will come, and then we'll have the same conversation again. The next set of managers will come, we'll have this conversation again, until we get to a point where we are holding people criminally liable for some of these things that are happening. All of this conversation will just die down. The next item on our news cycle will occupy all of us, our attention, and we will go on. And the consumer will have to shoulder the burden of this situation.
There is this issue that also has come up because of the review that government is undertaking, if you like, at the ECG. And to the extent that, for example, in some of the last year and 2 years ago, ECG's planned procurement was somewhere around 801 billion Ghana cedis. Ended up procuring almost 10 billion Ghana cedis. And you ask yourself whether, the ECG had a board. The ECG at that time had a supervising ministry, and nobody asked questions. We are in a new era. What do you suggest should be done? Because it is, if there was no procurement, I'm sure that these goods wouldn't have ended up at the port. Now, they put forth their work plan for the year, and they make the point that we'll do 800 to 1 billion cedi procurement, and then ended up with almost 10 billion.
Yeah, we have had calls to, for years now, ring the alarm on the procurement practices at the utility, where we felt that the procurement practices were not delivering value for money and was causing a lot of debt within the system. Of course, you're asking if there is management, there is a board, there's definitely people there that sanction some of these things. If you remember somewhere last year, we did a press conference asking for the board and the management, everybody to be sacked and for an investigation to take place. And I think a week after, the previous MD resigned and those pressures went down. But it goes back to the point that I'm making. If we don't hold people responsible for the things that they've done, if you read the report from the committee, it did indicate, the procurement people saying there was pressure from whoever. Let's investigate those things and ascertain the true facts of the matter. And people who are culpable should be held to book. If not, we'll be going around in circles. And it is refreshing that we are taking a new path towards looking at how to introduce some form of private sector participation.
Sure.
Because it appears that because everybody is government, government holding each other to account, it's becoming difficult for governments to do. So if we have some form of private sector participation in the management and operations of ECG, at least then governments can now be holding the new managers to account to certain KPIs. And I'm not sure government will countenance a private entity doing business in this manner when that process finally comes to bear. So we are looking forward to that process to evolve, only hoping that once again, the process is transparent enough to allow genuine businesses to be able to come and take over the management and operation of the company. If not, we repeat previous mistakes and allow people who are politically exposed. We would have a private sector managing the entity, and the same problems will persist because it's the same people that have gone through the back door to come in.
All right. Mr. Yacho, thank you so much. Let's leave it here for now because this discussion is not ending today. There's a lot more to chew on in subsequent bulletins. But let me move away from ECG Empower and then take you to another equally important national matter. That's the fight against illegal mining. And the fight cannot be won without strong and decisive judiciary. Lands and Natural Resources Minister Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa has called on the judiciary to play a role in tackling illegal mining, stressing the need for dedicated courts to expedite cases related to environmental destruction. According to him, swift and firm legal action is crucial to deterring offenders and reinforcing the government commitment to eradicating the menace. He was addressing the media in Accra this morning.
We have to win together. And this fight is not going to be easy. I just told you that we reclaimed the Offin Shelter Belt. And these bad guys, armed to their teeth, attempted to go and turn it into red again. And in the process, they injured a forestry officer with family who is fighting for his life at the Okonfuanoti Teaching Hospital. My friends, this is serious. And so you cannot, in these circumstances, I just told you what we've done with arrests, 76 arrests, where we've sent the government trying to prosecute people, and the judge says they should give the excavators, and thanks to the legal team and the support of the people of Ghana, a 24-hour reverse of decision has been made. This government, within this short period, is doing everything possible to make sure that the people of Ghana will join us, so we can expose those few bad people who are putting us in this risk. So, but we can't continue to talk as if all we have to do is just give up. We can't give up. The past weekend, they were in the Western North, working through, and I think even their work left them chasing people, led them to the Western region. If you heard some stories, whether somebody has asked some military to stop, no. It had to do with them entering the region because they were focused on their work, and they need to basically inform the other region that we are entering this region. But because of the operational reasons, there was some miscommunication there, and that was sorted out. There was never any order by anybody, and I've said it, to stop the military to work, and I've said it again. This is a period where every police officer in this country cannot use the excuse that order from above. There's no order from above. I am the minister responsible for lands and natural resources, and I'm telling every officer, everybody in charge, that the president of the republic says, please, there won't be any order from anybody.
Well, beyond the legal enforcement, the minister outlined several initiatives aimed at strengthening the fight against illegal mining and restoring Ghana's degraded lands. These include the Tree for Life initiative to revive destroyed ecosystem, the geotagging of excavators at the port to track mining equipment, and the decentralization of the licensing regime to empower local authority. He also reaffirmed the government's stance that a few individuals cannot be allowed to profit at the expense of millions and pledged to explore financial avenues to support large-scale mining land reclamation efforts.
See, whether or not to shoot and kill. My friends, these are people that are armed to their teeth and determined to even kill our military officers. If you ask me, we should defend our forests with our heart and soul and protect our forest reserves. And I believe that, I think some of you have not been close to those actions, but a lot is happening. A lot is happening. But Ghana is a free society. I think the last thing this government wants to do is to come every morning to announce some scary things, to tell you, no, we want the people of Ghana as a free society to continue to go about their activities and leave the difficult work of protecting this country to those that have the skills to do, and they are on top of it. And I've told you that the military, working with our Forestry Commission, are working 24 hours a day. We cannot give up. This new government must be given a chance. in support. And we must be very frank. If we see that we are making progress, we must say so. We must criticize when we are not making progress. I just told you today. I remember I launched the blue water gas, and I saw us the cartoon and laughs. Well, guess what? They don't need to have arms, but the problem is know how to swim. That's what they are being trained for. To swim, to be active by the Navy.
Right, let me bring in Dr. Ken Asigbe. He is with the Media Coalition, a convener for the Media Coalition against Galamsey. Mr. Asigbe, I know you don't have much time, so I'll go straight to the point. Now, beyond the platitudes, do you see, a reflection of that on the ground, that indeed we are committed to what we say?
Well, I think without a doubt, this Minister for Lands and Natural Resources is definitely committed to the fight and has a few positive things that are going on. The only challenge, and again, so he invites all of us to join him in the fight. And so we need to do that. And we need to applaud him for some of these processes that he's putting in place. The issues about geotagging. It should be geotagging of every equipment. But you see, the challenges and the frustrating he's facing is the reason why you need a state of emergency. You need a state of emergency because these people are armed to the teeth. You need a state of emergency because, you have people who, as he himself said, are terrorists.
Right.
Who have taken portions of your land. And I don't know why that is becoming very difficult. To the extent that you have a forestry commission person who is fighting for his life. Did I see a story also about a police person who had gone into some of these water bodies and has been swept by the current?
Yes, he died yesterday.
I said yesterday. And so you cannot be putting our people's lives, the security forces' lives at risk when you are allowing these people, to sometimes overpower and outgun our people. So that is why we need a declaration of the state of emergency on these water bodies in this.
We appear to be losing Dr. Ken Asigbe there. The connection to him. We'll see if we can re-establish that connection so that we can hear him speak before he takes leave of us. Let's see if we can reconnect to Dr. Ken Asigbe, who is making a point about the need for the declaration of a state of emergency. Right. So, can I see, Mr. Asigbe, you're making a point.
Yes, so I'm saying that the issues around the specialized courts, for example, it is so important because the example of the UK, and I make it all the time. When the riots were happening, because of the special powers they had, and the state of emergency will give that to us, we should be able to then get these courts where you are taking the arraign and in 24 hours you are jailed. If you have those ones, you will not have that, like the magistrate of the entry place doing that, what it is that he did. And so we really need to all mobilize ourselves and support the minister in terms of the things that he's doing. But there are a few things that have to be done. This LI, that bad LI 2462, has to be repealed. The Minister for Interior should do an about 10. We should not have the situation where these foreigners who are engaged in this, we say we'll deport them. Like Aisha one, they will be back again, to come and bite us. So we should throw the Minerals and Mining Act 995 at them and make sure that we fine them the severest fines and also jail them as well. Use the fines to be able to do the reclamation, do the restoration of our forests that we have. But it is important that we deal with the terrorists who are currently occupying parts of our forest reserve. And I agree completely with the minister. And the IGP says he's declaring a state of a war on these people. We want to see the actions. We want to see the actions to the extent that excavators cannot be moving around, to the extent that we have an airline that talks about tracking of excavators. Anybody whose excavator is not being tracked should not be allowed in these mining areas. And we should extend it to the extent that last year, excavators were the third most expensive, valuable things that were imported into this country. The excavators coming in that do not have roads we don't need them for the roads. They're just bringing them as weapons of mass destruction, like you're seeing in the footages that you're showing us. So we should proscribe the importation of excavators so that if you are importing, you need to go through The same legal regime when you are importing morphine, the pharmacies are importing morphine to produce medicines. You should go through the same ones in such a way that we make sure that the licensing regime is very top. And we should start naming and shaming the owners of the excavators that we have seized. All the operations that the minister has done. Who are the people who own these excavators? Who did they sell them to? Who did they rent them to? We should start naming them so that we know these are the nation wreckers. These are the people who are brought in the weapons of mass destruction to come and mess us up. So I completely support the minister that the issue of getting this specialized court that should be able to deal with these issues comprehensively, we should be able to do. And as we talk about that, the NG court issues, for example, we should be asking the IGP to find out which policeman took a minerals and mining case to a magistrate court when we know that these cases are supposed to go to the High Court.
Right.
And how is it that you also have a judge who did the bad thing that he's done and then has done the 24-hour runabout it? It's despicable. And people like this ought to be sanctioned.
And are you disappointed about this stone silence on the part of government about the need for the declaration of a state of emergency and the complete withdrawal or repeal of that particular LI?
Completely. I am surprised because the NDC, when they were in opposition, joined us in asking for a state of emergency. And if you have a minister who tells you that there are terrorists on our land, those are the ingredients that allows you to be able to declare a state of emergency in part of this country. So that is very important. In terms of the repeal or the revocation of the LI, we currently have almost 3,000 signatories signing on and asking His Excellency the President. Now that Parliament is on recess, this is the time for us to arrest and annul that amendment and revoke the law. If we revoke the law and the government says they want the EPA involved so that the likes of Chirano, the likes of Newmont, the bauxite mine who have been mining but have not just been destroying, have been restoring and all of that. You want the EPA to monitor their work. Fine and good. Then you introduce another instrument that has stakeholder engagement, but not that law that turns completely the governance around, where you start off when you want to go and mine in the forest, you go to the Minerals Commission first, go to everybody and come to the Forestry Commission last. That's a bad law. And there's several elements of that law from Regulation 4, Regulation 8 and 9, Regulation 16 that has to be done with. And the most important thing is that the law itself, the LI is not built on any parent law. And as the lawyers will tell you, you cannot build something on nothing.
Right.
So that law is built on nothing, and that law has to go. And already, as I'm saying to you, almost about 3,000 people are signing the petition asking His Excellency the President to revoke and repeal the law, as he himself said when he was campaigning. And even when he won, January, he was still saying the issue about the repeal and the revocation.
Let's leave it here for now so I can allow you to attend your meeting. Dr. Kenashigwe is convener for the Media Coalition Against Illegal Mining or Galamsey. Now, Clean Jobs Resources Limited, they are threatening legal action against the Western North Regional Minister. What claims by the minister that it is involved in illegal mining. The company says the claims by the minister are unfounded and without any basis, and that they have rather been working with state security agencies and the Forestry Commission to fight illegal miners in their legally acquired mining concession. Joy News has been secured copies of the letter written by the company to the National Security Coordinator and the Lands and Natural Resources Minister seeking their intervention. Let me bring you part of what they wrote to the minister demanding. And they say that Clean Jobs Resources, they are denying claims or allegations made by the Western Regional Minister regarding his involvement in illegal mining activities within the Tano area Forest Reserve. Clean Jobs Resources Limited is a reputable organization that, according to them, they are dedicated to upholding the highest standards of environmental protection and legal compliance, insisting that they operate strictly within the bounds of Ghana's minerals and mining regulations, specifically as 703. Right, so your letter to the minister is what you have on your screens, and yeah, I'm guessing that we can do that. Now let's get some some few perspectives to this, man. Dr. Michael Jomfor is Project Director, Clean Jobs Resources Limited. Also on Zoom, we'll bring in other guests, but let me find out from Dr. Jomfor. So you want the minister intervention to establish what exactly?
Thank you very much for granting me the audience. Actually, Clean Job is a registered company. The company is licensed. Legally, it has obtained its EPA license. We have our forest entry license. All the necessary documentation, Clean Jobs have gotten it. We have a very main challenge in the Tano Area forest area. So technically, Clean Jobs have not started operations. Early this year, we involved Honorable Robert Brentum, and we discussed with him that the rate of devastation of the Tano Area Forest Reserve is alarming. Personally, I have done a documentary with over 2,000 illegal miners in the forest reserve. So currently, we need the minister's intervention. On 26th of this month, of March, Clean Jobs engaged with the Forestry Commission, that is Mr. Joe Apia, and we gave them support through the military that they should ransack the forest reserve from excavators.
Right.
Even as I am speaking now, 26 excavators have been seized, and they are with the district assembly.
And these were excavators that were working in your concession. These excavators were working in your concession.
No, they were working in the concession and outside the concession. So the forestry, as Angie said, that they need, these people are well armed. So they need the military to assist them. So all we did is, okay, fine, if you need military assistance, you are legally, you are supposed to go and fight, but you need resources. We gave them the necessary resources.
Right.
And all these excavators have been seized now. And the operation is ongoing. The military is currently there. Clean Jobs has technically not started operations.
Okay.
But the rate of devastation in the Tano Area Forest Reserve, I will speak to Ghanaians, our President, Honorable Minister, we really need your help. We don't want to be used as a scapegoat. The Clean Job has done this. So we are doing all this video documentation, and even prior to our EPA license, we go to the Forest Reserve with the EPA, the Minerals Commission, we have the Water Commission, we have the Liaison Committee, and we flew drones all over the Tano Area Forest Reserve. All these documents are there in EPA's quarters. And they all accepted that the rate of devastation is too high. So certain parts of the forest where this devastation has taken place will be allowed as mineable areas. So I'm just coming in to say that Clean Job is not an illegal mine, it's not conducting any illegal mining operations.
Right.
In the Tano Area Forest Reserve, the excavators we have seen are physical evidence.
Right. I think we've lost Dr. Jomfor there, but the point has been made that Clean Jobs has yet to start mining operations, and they are not involved in any illegal mining. They are seeking the intervention of the Western North Regional Minister, the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, to help them do their business in an atmosphere of serenity. Let's take a short break here on the pause and return with that warning coming from President John Mahama of a possible flooding, and he's asking that certain interventions be taken. We'll also be finding out the impact the tariff, the 10% tariff imposed on Ghana would have on exporters to the U.S. market when we return from this short break. Stay put. Mark, this is a pause, and always a pleasure to have you here. I'm glad that you are still with me on this show. Now, President John Mahama is warning of possible severe flooding as he expresses concern over the Garrett project, which he says are all behind schedule. During a tour of major drainage systems and flood-prone areas with the Anti-Flood Task Force, he urged authorities to expedite all projects under the Garrett to mitigate the impact of the rains. The Greater Accra Resilient and Integrated Development Garrett project was initiated under the administration of President Akufo-Addo. The project was approved in 2019 with funding from the World Bank, aiming to address flooding, improve drainage infrastructure in the Greater Accra region. Presidential correspondent Maswala Gbagba has more in this report.
President John Mahama toured several flood-prone areas including Achimota, Malam Junction, Kaneshi First Light, and the Odo Drain at Circle as part of efforts to tackle flooding in Accra. He was accompanied by members of the Anti-Flood Task Force chaired by Deputy Chief of Staff and Task Force Head Stan Dogbe. At Malam Junction, Stan Dogbe expressed concerns over a private business, Kitech Motors, illegally filling a Ramsar site and a water retention basin, warning that it could worsen flooding after heavy rains.
So you are selling the Ramsar site to a private company, and you are here to defend the fact that the company is filling the place up and causing problems. And you want us to continue this, Mr. President. I think that the task force we've gone around with hydrology, we've gone around with water resources, we've gone around with the ministry. The challenge here is that the over 112 field that is, which is being filled consistently by the company, two companies here, and then I think the VIP on the other side. They are the ones that are closing up the retention basis. So if you go to Blue Lagoon, which we have to drive through the other, every house there, the water enters into the roof. Every house. So most of the sea is green from the last rain pattern. The drain that President Mills constructed, it's choked right there because the water can't flow into this place. So if the chiefs sold the land to the private companies, they should not be here defending the fact that they sold land and somebody is dredging a small piece. Because the effect is not going to be, as Mr. Mako said the last time, we can do all the works that we are currently doing up there. If this siltation continues, and you can see that they are going.
In response, President Mahama ordered Kitech Motors to remove the silt and restore the area to prevent further environmental damage.
Because they are creating distraction for other people's properties and even loss of lives. Sometimes when it floods heavily, we lose human lives. And so it's not because we don't have a sympathy for people like that, but we must enforce the bylaws. And the point is, the assembly here, how did you sit and allow this to happen? Can you imagine the volume of water that this place alone can hold when it rains? And so if you fill it up and you say there should just be a drain passing through, the drain cannot contain that water. And so let's do what we have to do. They should remove all this, and it should be at the cost of the people who did it. They should take this back where they brought it from.
The tour continued at the Kaneshi First Light, where the president urged contractors to speed up drainage works ahead of the rainy season. Finally, at the Odo Drain, President Mahama called on the dredging contractors to accelerate their work to mitigate flood risks.
These garage projects for desilting the major drains were given since last year. It is clear that all of them are behind schedule. And from what I have seen, these drains are not going to be ready before the rains open up. And if they aren't, it means that we must expect that there will be severe flooding this season. I would have thought that the contractors will take advantage of the dry season and work as quickly as possible so that we would have been ahead with these projects by now. But unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And so we just have to caution citizens of Accra that there's going to be severe flooding because of the delay in these projects. But we have to do everything to alleviate destruction of property and loss of life as much as possible. But I've charged the Garrid Secretariat and the Hydrology section and the Ministry to pay constant attention to make sure that all the projects that have been awarded under Garrid to make Accra resilient from flooding are speeded up as quickly as possible so that we can minimize the flooding.
Of course, that's President John Dramani Mahama. Now, joining us on Zoom is Joseph Portofi. He's the Deputy Director, Synoptic Meteorology and Forecasting. Mr. Portofi, so we are entering, or we've already entered into the rainy season. I mean, what kind of the volume of rain to expect this year? Is it frightening?
Yes, especially those of us in the eastern coast of Ghana, that is from Central Region to Aplau. We forecasted that we'll be experiencing above normal rainfall. And when we say above normal rainfall, it means the rainfall will be above what we experienced last year, last 2 years, and last 3 years. So we should brace ourselves for more rains, especially those of us in the eastern coast.
And when you talk about the eastern coast, specifically, which areas are you talking about?
From Aplau through Adan to Tema, to Accra, Kaswa to Winneba, some part of getting to Cape Coast. That's the eastern coast. So Accra is inclusive.
Okay. And then, so what about the coastal areas?
Oh, yes. When I talk of the eastern coast, especially the coastal areas, that is Aplau. When I talk about the middle belt, then it means from somewhere Sunyane, from Suhum, Makesim, Asemankesi, Kede, those areas at the middle belt, to Ashanti region at the middle belt. But those of us along the coast, the eastern coast, we are expecting to have above normal rainfall. And Accra is inclusive. So we need to brace ourselves for more rains. It has just started.
So, and this will last for how many months?
Yes, the major rainy season will last up to somewhere first week in July. Or second week in July. Then third week in July to August, September, we'll have a little dry spell. Then it will come back ending of September to October, November, then December, we'll get into the Ramadan season.
All right. So what would be your advice to residents that are, identified to be in this danger zone?
Very well. I think this is the time for us to make sure at least all gutters should be desilted. At least the choke gutters should be desilted. If there are structures on waterways, we need to at least make sure we take them out of the waterway. And then also, when it is coming to rain, we shouldn't be throwing rubbish and our refuse and things into the gutters, because already our gutters are narrowed. They are old gutters that we need to at least expand. So when you put rubbish and things into it, at the end of the day, the gutters will go and choke, and then the water will come back to us and then affect our homes and property. So we strongly appeal that we should be able to desilt our frontage of our houses where there are gutters, so that there will be a free flow of this water. And I believe when this happens, no, the rainy season will come, flash flood will come, but we'll still have our life to enjoy.
And you will be timely with your updates.
Oh, yes, for our updates, yes, for now, we can say we are about 80% or 85% accurate. So we should also make sure that at least we listen to the weather warnings. We have the weather update and then we have the warnings. For when we issue the warnings, it means we have seen the thing and it is occurring somewhere, and we said it will occur at this time. So we are also appealing to the media houses. When we give it to them, they should please let the public know. They shouldn't wait when the situation is over. Then they'll go and broadcast the weather warning, and they'll say, oh, we are now bringing the weather warning. No, the weather warning, we issued it 2 hours before it occurs in any place.
All right. Mr. Potofi, thank you so much. And I guess that we'll speak to you more on this story. But the warning here is that we are in for a very difficult time. The rains are going to be much bigger, much larger, much intense than we've experienced in the last 2 years. That is the warning coming from the Ghana Meteo. Now, Ghana's export sector faces a fresh setback as the United States slaps a 10% tariff on key exports, affecting trade volumes and increasing financial costs for businesses, a move that follows sweeping trade policies authorized by the U.S. President Donald Trump. The executive order, which affects several trading partners, is expected to rattle global trade relations, and Ghana is no exception. With bilateral trade between Ghana and the U.S. valued at $3 billion US, concerns are arrived that this tariff could strain relations. However, U.S. Ambassador to Ghana, Rejoinder Palmer, insists that despite the policy shift, Ghana remains an important partner to the United States.
The United States and Ghana have a very long-standing, close relationship, as you all know, and it's founded on kind of four pillars, I think. The first is historical and cultural, and something more than $3 billion in bilateral trade and investment is another kind of key pillar, and that's goods and services, but oil and gas going from here, gold going from here, pharmaceuticals, automobiles coming from the United States. So it's something that builds prosperity in both Ghana and the United States. So all of that to say that no matter what the change in language and how we express it or the change in focus, Ghana is a really important partner of the United States and will continue to be so. And I think the sort of emphasis on those things are really exciting because, again, the United States is behind Ghana's economic recovery. And that's through things like the World Bank and the IMF, but also American company interest in coming here. And there's going to be a big trade mission, which I can't announce yet, but it's coming. And I think there'll be a big U.S.-Africa business summit here next year. And I think both of those things will be good signals of the interest from American business in Ghana.
Right, let me bring in Associate Professor of Finance at the Andrews University, Professor William Kwesi-Prepra. Prof, good afternoon, welcome to the Pulse.
Good afternoon.
So since this announcement was made yesterday at the White House, there's so many reactions. The Prime Minister for Spain says the U.S. has returned to the 19th century protectionism. I don't know whether it's the same vibe you are getting, but let me just find out, why would the U.S. undertake this major, tariff adjustment that is virtually, rewriting world trade?
Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your viewers. U.S. is facing a major challenge from their budget deficit angle. It's roughly around 6.3% budget deficit to GDP. This is affecting their currency, making their currency weaker. In international finance and econometrics, averagely, a 2% budget deficit is what is required to ensure that the country will have a stronger currency. And the way to solve this issue is from two angles, which Trump is trying to do. One, budget deficit simply comes when you have your revenue minus your expenses, and you are supposed to either make surplus or deficit. So the way you address the deficit issue is one, either to reduce your expenditure. And you see Trump using the DOGE efficiency angle to reduce expenditure. And the way for him to raise revenue is to also use the tariffs. And as he's raising the tariffs, he's increasing revenue in the United States. So he really wants to address the budget deficit that America is facing. And every government will want to do this if you want to turn your economy around to make your currency stronger. And that is what, remember, he says you want to make America great again. And America is great again when they have a strong currency or strong economy.
I mean,
so that is the reason why we are having this major issue. For him, his hope is that the tariff is going to increase employment in the U.S. because manufacturing is going to go up.
Right.
Once manufacturing increases, increase employment. Remember, he's already laying off people.
Yeah.
As he lays off people, he has to find an alternative for them to get jobs. And the way to get them jobs is to make sure that the jobs that have been outsourced in other countries are brought back into U.S. And that is why he's trying to do this approach. One of the things you mentioned is that 19th centuries. Yes, indeed, 19th centuries, this happened. There's something in international economics, we call it beggar thy neighbor. When you raise your tariffs or you devalue your currency, it affects your trade partners. So all other trade partners may have to also come out with strategies to mitigate this approach. That is why we are seeing all these things happen. We have to understand him. And he's coming from a business perspective.
Right.
Remember, he did economics, so he understands what we are talking very, very well. He wants to just make sure that he increase revenue in America and reduce expenditure.
There are a few issues. I mean, just going to again the reactions. The France Prime Minister says the U.S. tariffs are a catastrophe for world economy. The European Commission President says the U.S. tariffs are a major blow to the world economy. Everybody is feeling it. And here in Ghana, there's 10% imposition on exports to the U.S. market from Ghana. But if tariff has been imposed, it means that whatever the exporter from Ghana is putting in the U.S. market, you will have to also factor in the 10% imposition, which means that the consumer in the U.S. ultimately will have to pay more for the product that he may want to buy.
So this tax is, we call it ad valorem. So it's not going to be paid by the Ghanaian exporter, but for those of us who live in the United States. The disadvantage is that if the product being exported becomes so expensive, we in the USA will find an alternative.
Okay.
The alternative will mean that we have to buy from what we produce if we find that it is cheaper than the one being exported into the country. Remember, it is going to take US about 1.5 years to be able to produce some of the items that they have placed tariffs on now. So in the initial stage, it's going to affect citizens in the US, but in the long run, it's going to make US not have a lot of interest in buying products from other countries. That is why you've seen all the other nations complaining about it. And in the case of Ghana, once product from Ghana is not being purchased by US, what is going to happen is that it's going to create unemployment today in Ghana.
Okay.
For example, those in the agricultural industry exporting yam food products to the US. Now, in the past, it was 0 rated. Now it's going to be 10%. If Ghanaians in the US decide that, we are going to eat like Americans because of the tax, it's going to create unemployment in Ghana. One other important element is that tariffs has an impact on exchange rates. And this is going to cause a major impact in exchange rates from the angle of inflation. So generally, we are going to see prices in the world going up. Everybody is going to adjust its price increase. And as prices increases, it will have a triple effect on the country's exchange rate, because there's one principle we call interest rate parity in using the computing exchange rate. This is going to have that effect. In the case of Ghana, our cedi is going to devalue more. In the case of US, their currency is going to become very strong.
It's going to get stronger
because of these.
Prof,
and that is what is going to affect the global market.
My final question will be, clearly, looking at the publication that came from the White House. This is what they want to describe as reciprocal tariff. So you take a look at the tariff charge to the US. For example, Algeria is 59%. What the US is imposing is 30%. Ghana is 17%. What the US is imposing is 10%. So even if you look at it carefully, and I try to educate me because this is not my area, you will say that even with the imposition, it is still lower than what the countries are charging on product from the US.
That's what we have been saying, that all that he's trying to do is to close the gap, the disparities between the tariffs. So he's trying to close the gap, and in a way, it's going to make products from other countries not too much very attractive to Americans. However, when American product, which has been deemed to be of high quality and durable, being sent to other countries, they are taxed more. So what he's trying to say is that, can the other countries also come and say, can we reduce our tariffs and now have a negotiation with Trump, so that he also reduce the tariffs put on our products? So at the end, I'm seeing that it may come to a point where all parties may have to sit down again through the trade liberalization agreement and start to negotiate. If we really know the nature of Trump, he's someone who wants to negotiate.
Right.
So he's using this to call all governments and say, if you want me to do something, come, let us sit down, let us negotiate. And that will make America great again, you know. When you are negotiating with him, he feels he feels more powerful, and he will use his word. America is great again.
All right. Prof, thank you so much. Let's leave it here for now. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Of course, the MPP minority in Parliament, their ranking member on the Trade and Industry Committee, they've issued a statement and they say that the introduction of a 10% tariff on goods that previously entered the U.S. duty-free will likely reduce the price competitiveness of Ghanaian products in the U.S. market. The concerns products that were already subject to standard U.S. import duties and might be affected if AGOA is impacted by this measure. And they talk about the sector that are likely to be affected by this imposition here in Ghana. They say the apparel industry, which employs over 5,000 young people, is particularly vulnerable. Cocoa, whilst most cocoa beans enter duty-free, about 30% of cocoa export powder and paste benefited from AGOA preference. A 10% tariff would impact this segment. Yam, people export yam to the U.S., and then with this 10%, it will negate this advantage that we've had. And they say that it's important that the government places emphasis and prioritize the implementation of AFTA. So they are asking for diversification of export markets, expand exports of manufactured products to other African countries. Governments should prepare to take advantage of trade diversion based on retaliatory measures that will be implemented by major trading partners, government's support for exports. And of course, this, we're hoping to speak to the ranking member on the Trade and Industry Committee, Michael Ochre-Befi, but he's unavailable for now. So we'll leave it here. But this is a matter that is taking a life of its own. And we'll be back on this as well. Now, a staggering 80% of women in Ghana's workforce battle reproductive health challenges, yet most workplaces lack policies to support them. That's the alarming finding of a new study by civil society organization Confidence, which identifies severe menstrual pain and pregnancy-related issues as the most common struggles. The report raises urgent questions about the workplace inclusivity, with managing partner of Confidence, Michael Koto, calling for stronger stakeholder engagement to push for gender-sensitive labor policies.
I think there is consensus that research evidence provides a solid basis to advocate for interventions, to advocate for change. So I think that's the single most important thing. The research has provided the evidence. Our job now is to keep the conversation going. Policymakers, companies, women, men, bring all stakeholders together. How can we work with the evidence that this Confidence research has produced?
Well, the findings have caught the attention of the Office of the Vice President, and that office has pledged to introduce new policies to tackle these challenges. Speaking to Joy News, Policy Advisor Dr. Miriam Rahinatu Idrisu underscored the need for breastfeeding-friendly workplace and more inclusive policies. She also reviewed plans to establish a Women's Equity Committee.
Then is very prepared to nurture women and support women to grow. So one of the ways we are going to look at it is to continue the engagement. Yes, this doesn't even include the challenges of men within the workspace. We start from the workspace. We need a breastfeeding policy at the workspace. You don't need the vice president to come to that level to ensure that there's a breastfeeding policy in place where women can even go sit there, breastfeed their children in a dignified environment. The conversation goes on, and we are prepared and ready to advocate for the full implementation of the affirmative action law.
And as the world commemorates World Autism Awareness Day, the founder of Bright Steps International School, Grace Nkrumah, is calling on government to do more to educate Ghanaians about autism. As part of the celebration, the school organized a float through the streets of Accra to raise awareness and encourage inclusivity for individuals on the autism spectrum. There's more in this report.
The world observes Autism Awareness Day. The focus is on the urgent need for greater education and support for autistic individuals. This year's theme, Advancing Neurodiversity and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, emphasizes how inclusive policies can drive change and contribute to the SDGs. To raise awareness, Bright Steps International School organized a float through Accra, engaging the public and promoting understanding of autism. The event highlighted the challenges faced by individuals on the spectrum and tested public knowledge.
I know about autism from the infancy. You can see a child who cannot speak. So sometimes we used to say, "Where are Bosumba?" That's what I know about autism.
So they are like children that normally get scared when they are frightening or something. So normally they behave differently from other people. But I think they are normal with us.
What do you know about autism?
I don't have any idea.
Have you heard about it somewhere before?
Yes.
Founder of Bright Steps International School, Grace Nkrumah, stressed the importance of public education and urged government to take active role in awareness campaigns.
This battle or this cross of awareness creation should go beyond private individuals, private schools. The nation should take it on board. We have these children across the nation, and if we can invest in them early in their education, it will save the country a lot of money. So it is not just for individuals to spread the news. We need the entire nation to come on board to create the awareness.
Advocates believe increased education and government support can help foster a more inclusive society. Nicholas Ekoyama's report for Joy News.
Today is World Autism Awareness Day. We are out educating each one and everyone about autism.
Well, that's our show for today, but in the next hour and some 15 minutes, we have our national dialogue on the state of the Ghana National Fire Service. We are asking the question, how best can we make it more responsive to emergency situations? We've got the Ghana National Fire representatives in the studio to tell us the state of affairs and what they are doing to ensure that they are prompt in responding to emergency situations. We've also got the ministry to provide policy direction as to what government is doing to reach to the Ghana National Fire Service. We've got insurance companies to speak on the remedies that could be available for you if you become a victim to fire. And of course, we've got the traders, some of the traders that got their stores and their investment destroyed in recent fires across the country. And we'll also be hearing from people in the management space, and I'm talking about the public management space, and also be sharing their thoughts with us, plus you here on the program. And this national dialogue is starting at 6 p.m. here on Joy News, or also live on Joy 99.7 FM. Join with your comments, your contribution, more especially your recommendation to make the Ghana National Fires more viable, more potent in dealing with fire situations and emergency situations across the country. The dialogue starts at 6 p.m. till 9 p.m. here on Joy News and, of course, on Joy 99.7 FM. Well, that's our show for today. For more stories, log on to our website, myjoyonline.com. We've got stories. ASEPA petitions President Mahama for the removal of the Auditor General from office. And of course, Supreme Court grants NDC and candidates extra time to respond to EC in election case. And then also there are 63 in Sawan prison inmates. They've earned degrees from the University of Cape Coast. Ghana remains important to the U.S., no matter what. That's the U.S. ambassador to Ghana. Folks, whatever you are up to in the hours ahead, I hope it's profitable. My name is Elton Brobe. See you same time tomorrow on another exciting edition of The Pulse. Until then, stay put because we've got a dialogue coming your way at 6 p.m. Good evening.